All aboard? That's when I bought my first Harley, my new addiction. I had to have every upgrade and addition I could get on it as soon as I could get it. All my extra money went to motorcycle crap. I chose to live in a single wide trailer in a trailer park that was less than a mile from a fuel refinery and fight black mold because of a leaking roof for almost 2 years instead of bettering my life. During this time, I struggled to scrape by yet again. I was working a full-time job, driving graveyard to Moab, Utah, and back, delivering to auto parts chain stores. It wasn't a bad paying gig, but I was spending like I was on the drill rig still. I ended up picking up a side hustle running Uber around the Wasatch Front area. One night, I picked up an Army chaplain and his wife, returning from a vacation. Their destination was about 30 minutes from the airport, so we got to have a pretty good conversation about their travels. Somewhere in the conversation, he asked out of nowhere what branch I'd served in. It threw me so far off guard that I almost ran off the road when I jerked my head to look at him wide eyed. I hadn't mentioned anything about being in the military. I told him my story, and he slowly lost color in his face as I came to a close with the beginning of my first divorce. Wait, you were in when? And with what command? He asked. I recalled to him what had happened that first night in AIT and how I'd been sent home. He then proceeded to tell me about the unit he was supposed to link up with somewhere in the sandbox, but he was delayed in his travel to meet up with them before they mobilized. He said he's almost 100% certain that it would have been the unit I would have been deployed with, considering the timeline I gave him of my time in the service. Had I pursued the Patriot missile systems MOS, I was considering switching to. He then told me about the blessing he had with his delay in travel to link up with the mobilizing unit and how they had been wiped out to the last man in a roadside IED attack. I almost wrecked again. Everything happens for his reason. I know some of you are thinking, this guy's crying over spilled milk, and I may be in your story. Don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle or end. But this is my story. We all have our own demons. These are just mine. Athena and I were divorced for a little over a year and a half. We ended up realizing that not putting our money together, because I had not yet realized that I was the problem, would solve our issues on fighting for the most part, and moved back in together, into the rundown, leaking single wide I was currently renting. By the time I got a local job, I was so hooked on the Harley that I was pursuing my dreams of wanting to ride with the motorcycle club. I watched Sons of Anarchy, and I knew what to expect. Right? Wrong. I prospected for one of the oldest clubs in the country for 186 days. This was fast for the club. The minimum prospecting period was 6 months, and there was a lot required of one to be able to earn your patches in that amount of time. Motorcycle clubs aren't like older social clubs. There's no set time limit for initiation, but to the best of my knowledge, no one in that chapter or club has fully prospected faster than I did. I hated being someone's bitch and doing what I'm told, so I played ball with the silly rules and got my patches. I spent every extra minute I had in that world. I was voted into the position of secretary treasurer within a week of becoming full patch, and it basically gave me a second job that I didn't get paid for. I designed all the merchandise for the chapter fundraisers. I made the flyers. I organized the sponsors. I did a lot for the club, a lot for my chapter, a lot for the quote brothers. I would spend every extra second I had working for the club, whether it was setting up sponsors for the fundraisers or organizing the meetings and dealing with member issues. I would meet up with the brothers whenever they called. I lived and breathed the club life. I was with this one percenter club for almost 4 years. I dedicated a lot of time and money into this organization. I traveled, on average, out of state every other month with the club. We went to rallies and rides all over a few of the western states. We politicized with other clubs and organizations. We made a lot of public appearances to keep face. It was nothing like the TV's television shows. Well, to a point. I loved hunting, pedophiles mainly, especially once I learned how easy it was. It's literally like shooting fish in a barrel. That was the one thing I used the club as an excuse for, releasing some rage, frustration, and anger. I was tipped off on a predator that was in the area, and his prospect rallied some guys together to rough this sicko up. There were more than enough volunteers considering that is one of the creed of 99.999% of clubs I know of all have. No pedophiles. We got this prick to think he was about to meet up with a teenage girl to fulfill some sick fantasy of his. The look on his face when he realized that a bunch of dudes in leather were here to talk instead of a girl was priceless, to say the least. When the cops showed up to our hangout afterwards because this little sissy had called in his new boo-boos, we didn't have to really say anything with the texts we showed the piggies, and they left us to arrest him. The very next day, after we'd all blasted this pedophile all over every social media we had, I got an odd call. Someone I knew was a paramedic and had picked this sicko up after he posted bail and made it home. They had to pump his stomach. He downed a bottle of pills. That's all that was said to me. Seems guilty in my opinion. I did my best to not do anything too wrong, but I know now the oath I took was not the right thing to do. I pledged allegiance to men that had no interest in my betterment as a human, or a dad, or a man, to be honest. They all claimed they were manly men and did manly things. The only manly thing I did there were push ups. I was with this organization for almost 5 years. I did plenty of dumb stuff, and only by the grace of God did I not end up dead or in jail. Until we got a clubhouse, most of the meetings were held in someone's home, so they were kept fairly short, and most of the partying and excitement were in public, so it was fairly reserved because it was in public at the bars. Once the house got established, every weekend was a reason to celebrate. I drank until I puked and kept drinking. There are dozens of embarrassing photos of me out there with a dildo suction cup to my shiny bald head. We would have costume parties for the holidays, and every birthday was a reason for me to find drugs to celebrate with. Lots and lots of drugs. Alcohol and some drugs fueled that house for over a year. We would hold open houses to raise money and keep the party fueled and going for a day or two. Now, I want to point out that some drugs were only supplied by a few of the guys, and not everyone did it. It was condoned by the club rules, but we still did it. We were outlaws. Everyone had their DOC, or drug of choice, and to each their own. I just happened to like the way Coke smelled sometimes. That wasn't the only thing I would do, though. I liked smoking weed, too. So basically, I'd get loaded, and sometimes we'd jump on the bikes and race through the city, onto the freeways, and up the twisty 20 to 40 mile an hour rated corners of the Wasatch Canyons, pushing and exceeding triple digits on the speedometer. Be safe, Athena would always say as I went out the door to meet with the brothers. I won't, I was always my response. And I wasn't. Sorry, my love. I was reckless. I had demons. And these ones, thanks to God the Father, you helped me to conquer. I left the club eventually. I started to realize that I was losing my kids, and it was probably too late. I was watching the quote men around me give up their families for bikes, boobs, and beer. I was starting to realize that the world was not what I thought it was either.